You are not here by accident. I want you to really pause for a moment and let that sink in. The very fact that you are hearing this, reading this, experiencing this message at this exact moment in your life is not something to dismiss as coincidence. Nothing in your experience is random. Everything has a reason behind it, even when the mind cannot immediately understand it. You have been moving through life thinking that events are separate, disconnected, happening by chance. People coming and going, situations rising and falling, thoughts appearing and disappearing without order. But there is a deeper intelligence at work in your experience, a silent order behind what seems like chaos. And when you begin to awaken to this, you start to realize that life has been responding to you all along, not just happening to you. The fact that this message has reached you means something in you is already shifting. You may not fully see it yet, but there has been a subtle change in your inner world that has made you receptive to something different. You don't notice it at first because transformation rarely announces itself loudly. It begins quietly, in the background of your awareness, like a faint pull towards something you cannot yet define. Think about the moments that led you here, the questions you've been asking, the dissatisfaction you may have felt with old patterns, the inner sense that there must be more than what you have been experiencing. Those feelings were not random either. They were signals. They were guiding you, preparing you, shaping your attention so that when the right message arrives, you are able to recognize it, even if only at a deeper level within yourself. Most people walk through life ignoring these signals. They assume everything is external, that meaning must be searched for somewhere out there. But you are being invited to look inward, to understand that your attention is not passive, it is creative, it is selective, and what you consistently give attention to begins to organize itself around you as your lived experience. So when I say you are not here by accident, I mean that something in you has been drawn to this moment by your own inner state. You may not remember choosing it consciously, but your deeper awareness has been guiding you toward this point of recognition. Life is not forcing anything upon you, it is revealing what you are ready to see. There is a reason certain messages stand out to you while others fade away. There is a reason certain words feel like they are speaking directly to you, even though they are meant for many. It is because awareness meets awareness. The message is not outside of you, it is reflecting something already active within you. And this is the beginning of understanding something profound. You are always participating in what comes into your experience. You are not a passive observer of life, you are the one through whom life is being experienced and expressed. And when you begin to accept that, even slightly, everything starts to shift in meaning. So do not overlook this moment. Do not treat it as ordinary. Something in you has brought you here, and something in you is now ready to move beyond what it has known before. This is not the end of a thought, nor just another passing idea. It is a point of recognition, a quiet awakening to the fact that nothing in your life has ever been without purpose. And in this realization, you begin to see clearly. You were always meant to hear this now. Your current state has been preparing you for this moment far more than you realize. Most people believe they arrive at insights suddenly, as if something external finally clicked into place. But what they do not see is the long inner preparation that makes recognition possible. Nothing lands in your awareness without first being shaped by the condition you have been living in. Your emotions, your thoughts, your reactions to life, even your moments of silence and confusion, they have all been forming a pattern within you. That pattern is your state. And your state is not just how you feel, it is the lens through which everything in your experience is filtered. It determines what you notice, what you ignore, what you accept as possible, and what you dismiss without even questioning. So when you find yourself drawn to a message like this, it is not because the message appeared randomly in your path. It is because something in your current state has reached a point where it can no longer remain unconscious. There has been a quiet build-up inside you, a subtle pressure of awareness expanding against old limitations. You may have called it frustration or restlessness or even uncertainty, but in truth it has been preparation. Think back, even briefly, to what you have been carrying within you. The inner conversations you've had when no one was listening. The questions you didn't fully speak out loud. The feeling that something in your life was not fully aligned, even if you could not explain why. These are not meaningless mental events. They are indicators of a state evolving, stretching, preparing to transition into something new. A state does not change in a single instant. It builds itself gradually through repetition of thought, through emotional intensity, through attention placed again and again on certain ideas. And as it builds, it begins to attract experiences that match it. Not because life is randomly responding, but because your perception begins to tune itself to certain realities while excluding others. This is why two people can hear the same message and respond completely differently. One may feel nothing, while another feels as if the message was directed specifically at them. The difference is not in the message, it is in the state of the listener. What is already active within you determines what can be recognized as meaningful. And so your current state, no matter how confusing or unsettled it may have felt, has been doing something essential. It has been bringing you into alignment with a level of awareness that is ready to perceive differently. Without that inner preparation, even the most profound truth would pass unnoticed. But because something in you has been shaped through experience, through reflection, through lived emotion, you are now able to receive what you could not receive before. There is also something deeper to understand here. Your state is not fixed. It is not your identity in a permanent sense. It is something you are moving through, something you are capable of changing, but only once you recognize that you are inside it. Most people remain unaware of the state they are expressing, and so they repeat the same patterns endlessly, mistaking repetition for destiny. But you are being brought to awareness now, and awareness is the beginning of freedom. The very fact that you can observe your state means you are not completely bound by it. You are already stepping slightly outside of it, beginning to see it as something you have been in, rather than something you are permanently defined by. And in this recognition, something important becomes clear. Nothing you have experienced up to this point has been wasted. It has all been shaping your readiness for this moment of realization, preparing you to see differently, to feel differently, and ultimately to choose differently. Because once you understand the power of your state, you no longer move through life unconsciously, you begin to shape it from within. Awareness is the first turning point, and I want you to understand this not as an idea, but as an experience happening within you right now. Most people search for change in their circumstances, in their environment, in the people around them, believing that if something outside shifts, then their life will finally shift. But the real turning point has never been outside of you. It has always been the moment you become aware of what is already taking place within you. Before awareness, you are simply living out patterns. Thoughts arise, emotions follow, reactions happen, and life feels like it is unfolding automatically. You may even feel as though you are reacting to the world, but you are not yet seeing the deeper layer behind the reaction itself. You are inside the experience, but not observing it. And as long as you are inside it without awareness, it continues to repeat itself, because nothing is being interrupted. But the moment awareness enters, something extraordinary begins. It does not immediately change your circumstances. It changes your relationship to them. You begin to notice what was always there but hidden by habit. You see the thoughts that pass through your mind instead of being fully absorbed by them. You notice the emotional patterns that used to control your direction without question. And in that noticing, there is a subtle but powerful shift, because awareness creates space. And in that space, you are no longer purely reactive. You begin to witness instead of blindly participate. This witnessing is not passive. It is the beginning of transformation. It is the first time you are no longer completely identified with every thought you think or every feeling you feel. You begin to realize there is something in you that is observing all of it, something that remains steady even as everything else moves. This is why awareness is the turning point. Not because it instantly solves everything, but because it interrupts unconscious living. And unconscious living is what keeps people repeating the same cycles, the same outcomes, the same limitations, while wondering why nothing changes. When you become aware, you begin to question. And questioning is the beginning of freedom. You start to ask, is this thought actually true? Is this reaction necessary? Is this belief something I chose or something I absorbed? These questions were never possible before awareness, because before awareness, everything felt like truth without examination. Now something deeper begins to open within you. You start to realize that your inner world is not fixed. It is dynamic, shaped by attention. And what you repeatedly attend to becomes the dominant tone of your experience. This is not philosophy, it is direct observation. When awareness increases, patterns that once felt permanent begin to lose their authority over you. You may notice that even the problems in your life begin to feel different once observed clearly. They do not disappear immediately, but they lose their grip, because what once controlled you in the dark cannot control you once it is brought into the light of awareness. And this is the beginning of reclaiming your inner direction. This moment you are in right now is already part of that turning point. The fact that you are reflecting, listening, recognizing something in these words means awareness is already active in you. It is not something you are trying to create. It is something you are becoming conscious of. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Once you recognize that there is a part of you that is aware of your thoughts rather than being your thoughts, you begin to loosen your identification with limitation itself. You begin to step back into something more stable, more grounded, more powerful than reaction. This is the beginning of inner authority. Not control over the world, but clarity within yourself. And from that clarity, everything else begins to reorganize in ways you could not have forced before. Because once awareness is present, you are no longer lost in life, you are observing it being formed. You are being invited to shift your identity, and I want you to understand the depth of what that truly means. This is not about changing a habit here and there, or adjusting a few surface-level behaviors while remaining the same person underneath. This is about something far more fundamental. It is about the quiet recognition that who you think you are has been shaped, and therefore can be reshaped. Most people live from identity without ever questioning it. They say, "This is just who I am," and they accept limitations as if they were permanent facts. But identity is not fixed. It is constructed through repetition, through belief, through emotional memory, and through the stories you continue to accept about yourself. And because it is constructed, it can also be reconstructed. Now, this invitation does not come loudly. It does not force itself upon you. It arrives gently, through moments like this where something in you begins to feel the tension between who you have been and who you might become. You may notice it as discomfort or restlessness or even a subtle dissatisfaction with your current patterns. But that feeling is not a problem. It is a signal that your present identity is no longer large enough to contain what is trying to emerge within you. And so transformation begins here, in this inner tension. You start to realize that the version of you that reacts the same way, thinks the same thoughts, and expects the same outcomes is not something you are trapped inside, but something you have been expressing. And if it has been expressed, it can be changed through a new expression, a new assumption, a new way of being that you begin to inhabit from within. But there is something important you must understand. The old identity does not disappear instantly. It resists. It reappears through familiar thoughts, familiar emotional patterns, familiar expectations. It tries to convince you that it is who you really are. And if you are not aware, you will return to it automatically, because repetition feels like truth. This is why identity shift is not a single decision. It is a continuous act of inner alignment. It is the repeated choice to no longer accept every old definition of yourself as final. It is the quiet persistence of beginning to think differently, respond differently, and most importantly, see yourself differently even before the external world reflects it. And this is where most people hesitate, because they want proof before they change, but identity does not change after proof appears. Proof follows identity. Experience follows assumption. Life responds to what you consistently accept as true about yourself. So when you are invited to shift your identity, you are being invited to step into a new inner agreement with yourself. Not as fantasy, not as wishful thinking, but as a deliberate internal direction. You begin to ask, if I were already the version of myself I want to become, how would I think now? How would I respond now? How would I carry myself in this moment? And in asking that sincerely, something begins to reorganize within you, because identity is not just a label, it is a frequency of being. It is the sum total of what you accept as normal for yourself. And when that acceptance begins to change, even slightly, everything around you begins to respond differently. Not immediately perhaps, but inevitably. You may still feel the pull of the old self. You may still hear the voice of limitation trying to define you by past experience. But you are no longer required to obey it. You are no longer required to believe it as absolute truth. You are now seeing it for what it is, an old pattern, not a permanent identity. And in that realization, something very powerful begins to take place. You stop trying to fix yourself and start choosing yourself. You stop negotiating with limitation and start stepping into a new internal position of being. Because the moment you begin to shift identity from within, you are no longer waiting for life to change. You are the change that life must respond to. Your attention is creating your reality, and I want you to understand this not as a poetic idea, but as a direct principle of your lived experience. Wherever your attention goes, your life begins to take shape. Not in an abstract way, but in a very practical and undeniable way. What you consistently notice, what you repeatedly think about, what you emotionally invest in, becomes the dominant structure of your experience. Most people do not realize they are training their own awareness every single day. They believe they are simply reacting to life, but in truth they are directing it through where they place their focus. Every thought you return to strengthens a pathway in your mind. Every emotion you revisit deepens a pattern. And over time, those patterns begin to form the reality you recognize as your life. This is why two people can live in the same world and yet experience entirely different realities. One person sees possibility everywhere, while another sees limitation in the same environment. One notices opportunity, while the other notices lack. The difference is not in the world itself, but in the direction of attention. And so, when you begin to understand that your attention is not neutral, something very important happens. You realize you have been participating in the construction of your experience far more than you ever consciously acknowledged. Even the things you did not want, you may have been focusing on in resistance, fear, or worry. And in doing so, you gave them form in your awareness. This is not about blame, it is about recognition. Because once you see how attention works, you are no longer blindly controlled by it. You begin to observe it. You begin to notice where your mind naturally drifts. You begin to catch the moments where you feed thoughts that do not serve your direction. Not because you intended harm, but because you were unaware of their creative influence. And in that awareness, something begins to change. You no longer have to force yourself into positive thinking. Instead, you become selective with your focus. You start to realize that attention is like a spotlight, and whatever is placed under that light begins to grow in significance within your inner world. So you become more intentional, not through effort but through understanding. You also begin to notice something subtle but powerful. What you repeatedly focus on begins to feel more real, even if it is not desirable. This is why worry can feel so convincing, and why fear can feel so immediate. It is not because they are true, but because they are being reinforced through attention. And what is reinforced feels real, even when it is only a pattern of thought. But the moment you withdraw attention, the pattern begins to lose strength. Not instantly, but gradually, like a structure that is no longer being supported. And in its place, something new begins to form, something aligned with where you now choose to place your awareness. This is where your power truly lies. Not in controlling every external circumstance, but in directing the current of your attention inwardly. Because attention is not passive observation, it is active creation. It selects, it amplifies, it organizes experience around itself. And when you begin to consciously direct it, you begin to notice a shift. The same world appears differently. The same situations carry new meaning. The same path you once walked unconsciously now feels open to reinterpretation. Nothing outside has changed yet, but everything within you has begun to reorganize. This is the quiet turning point most people miss. They wait for external change before they believe something has shifted. But real transformation begins with attention. It begins with what you choose to see, what you choose to dwell upon, and what you choose to return to again and again in your inner world. And once you fully understand this, you realize something profound. You were never trapped in your circumstances, you were only ever focused inside them. This is your moment to decide. And I want you to understand that I am not speaking about a dramatic external choice that the world will immediately recognize. I am speaking about an inner decision, a quiet but powerful turning point that happens within your own awareness. Most people imagine that life changes through sudden external events, but in truth, life changes the moment you decide differently within yourself. Right now, you stand at a threshold, even if it does not feel like one. Every realization you have received up to this point has been leading you here. You have been shown that you are not here by accident, that your current state has been preparing you, that awareness is the beginning of change, that identity is not fixed, and that your attention is shaping your experience. And now all of it comes together into one simple but profound truth. Nothing will shift in your life until you choose to shift from within. This decision does not require struggle. It does not require force. It requires recognition. The recognition that you no longer need to continue as you were, that the patterns you have repeated do not define what you must continue to repeat, that the version of you who has been reacting automatically is not the final expression of who you are. And yet you will notice something important at this point. The old way of being does not disappear just because you understand it. It will still try to pull your attention. It will still suggest familiar thoughts. It will still attempt to convince you that nothing has changed and nothing can change. This is where the decision becomes real. Not in the absence of resistance, but in the presence of it, because to decide is not to eliminate the old immediately. To decide is to no longer identify with it. You may find yourself returning to old thoughts, old feelings, old expectations. But now something within you is aware of them, and that awareness gives you choice. You can observe without becoming. You can notice without obeying. You can witness without accepting. And in that space, your life begins to reorganize itself. This is what most people overlook. They think decision is a moment of excitement, but real decision is often quiet. It is the internal turning where you stop agreeing with what no longer reflects who you are becoming. It is the moment you no longer negotiate with limitation as if it has authority over you. It is the subtle but definite inner movement where you say, without noise or announcement, I will no longer continue in this way. And once that inner line is crossed, everything begins to respond differently. You may not see immediate external evidence, but internally, something has already shifted. Your perception begins to adjust. Your reactions begin to soften. Your assumptions begin to loosen their grip. You are no longer fully embedded in the old pattern, even if you occasionally visit it. There is now distance, and in that distance, freedom begins to grow. This is why this moment matters so deeply. Because life does not wait for perfect conditions to change. It responds to the decision you embody now, not the results you expect later. And when that decision is firm within you, even in silence, even without validation, something in your experience begins to align with it. You are not waiting for life to give you permission. You are the one giving life direction through what you accept from this moment onward. So do not underestimate what is happening within you right now. You are not just hearing words, you are standing at the edge of a new direction. And the only thing required is your willingness to step into it inwardly, without hesitation, without needing proof, without waiting for certainty. Because the moment you decide within yourself, everything else has no choice but to follow.